Much for that, Peter. And we also have Noelle Lynskey. Noelle is down there at the back there with her long-time friend Mary beside her. And Noelle is deeply involved in poetry. Would that be fair to say, Noelle? Good. So now she's a lady who was born in Strokestown, yeah, and was brought up there, but you now live in Portumna, which is in County Galway. It's not near Galway, but it's in County Galway. Is that right? So in relation to that, she's been the director with the Shoreline Arts Festival. Is that right? Yeah, for many, many years, over 15 years, and you still sort of advise them. And last year, towards the end of the year, in 2025, her first publication called Featherweight was published. And in that book, it says she dedicated it to her parents. There's lots of different poems in there about different things. But one of the things I found out was that for Noelle, feathers have been kind of in her life somehow or another, as symbols or sort of little things that kind of make her think or something that relate to her in some way. And that's why she called it Featherweight. Is that right, Noelle? Sort of, yeah, sort of. Right, so now Noelle will be on first in a few moments, but I just thought, I saw her on a video talking about writing a poem, and she talks about it in terms of when she's writing a poem, it's like, or approaching a poem, it's like making a good stock. So she's talking about the stock, and having it ready on the boil, simmering away, and not on the boil, but simmering. And then she puts into it a chicken carcass, which she calls the scaffolding in the oven of her mind. And you can see she's very poetic. I thought that was wonderful too. And so she adds in words, metaphors, images, all the lines, the structure of the poem. And then she'd go on to thinking about, she leaves it for a while, she lets it simmer. Oh, it might take a day or two, but for her sometimes a poem might be simmering away for a few years or something, or longer time. But when she comes back to it, she has to do the job of editing. So then when she's editing, she is thinking about the seasoning of punctuation and adding in adjectives or getting rid of a line or developing a line or skipping it altogether and changing it, whatever she needs to do to make it really end with a successful saltiness of a last line. That's fantastic. Right, so you are a pharmacist, aren't you? Noelle, and I think you're a pharmacist of poetry. You soothe people with your poetry, you surprise people, and you cause them, happiness or some sort of connection going on there with your words. So would you like to come up to the stage, Noelle, and I'll give you a clap.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the lovely introduction and for the invitation to come and read with you here. It's really nice to drive over here this evening and select a few pieces to share with you. Because we are remembering this weekend a female writer, I thought I'd start with a poem from my book that I wrote in memory of Edna O'Brien, and it was written on August the 10th, 2024, which was the date that she was taken by boat across to Holy Island on Lough Derg, near where I live, and I drove kind of up the hill behind it and watched the boats, the flotilla, go across. And at the time I was reading her short story collection called Returning, so it seemed like a very appropriate title. Returning in memory of Edna O'Brien. On the day they take you home to Inishcaltra, the lake looks back, remembering the gaze of your young eyes and the gushing flow of your daring imagination. Your townland recalls the ripple of your laughter and the longing for your purple ink that lingered long after you fled this place that once was home. The trees on the shoreline sway, their boughs blessing today's boats that bears your body to the aloneness and solitude of the island's moss-lined grave. buoyed by your son's love, and a gratitude so deep it dapples the water, so the blue lake rises to the outpourings of the mourner's grief, and the oars dip to the rhythm and turn of old tunes, that between breaths incant chorus over and over. She's home, she's home, she's home. So I thought I'd kind of divide my selection into remembering writers that have died, and my next poem is in memory of Michael Longley, and any of you who follow poetry would probably know him from school. I know he's on the school curriculum nowadays as well. And one of his own favourite songs, or his favourite poems that he wrote himself, he called it Swan Song. And I called this poem The Lone Mate, and again written shortly after he died, and on the Shannon banks. I would go for a walk quite a bit, and there was a single swan out on the water, and this kind of came. So it kind of takes a little bit from his in the shape and form of the poem, but it's one single swan. The Lone Mate, after and in memory of Michael Longley. No doubt if you had been there walking with me on the Shannon bank, the lone pen preening herself in rhythm would turn your head too. Unaware your final poetic music has left us with the ripples of your absence. She preens as though in baptism. A ritual of oil and water, her beak moves up and down. Extending her wings, she gives me the nod and feather flap as her extending neck water mirrors a miracle of white. And another writer who died last year. We're reliving a lot of our wonderful artists in the last couple of years. Was the wonderful Moncon McGann. I'm sure you all remember him. And on the morning that he died, I was actually at home with a dose similar to what I have, but I'm not as sick this time. And I'd heard that he had passed, and I was very upset to hear it, because we had him as a guest at Shorelines a couple of times where he did his Aránagus Inn show. I'm sure some of you may have seen it. And he came another time and he interviewed couple of people, and he just had a wonderful spirit about him. And of course his use of and knowledge of Irish was fantastic. So when I'd be looking for a phrase, sometimes I'd email him and ask him about a word. And I'm involved a little with the Irish Workhouse Centre in Portumna, and we're looking at renovating the dining hall of that. And when we were looking at the project and introducing it as an idea, I kind of thought, rather than calling it the workhouse and that connotation, to give it a new name or a new phrase that would work for it. And I contacted him, and at the time I didn't know he was so ill, and he kind of came back saying he couldn't really help me. And I wished him well and went back and just said, well, you know, you're always my first port of call, wish you well. And then he came back with just these two words. He obviously thought about it and said, I help Noelle, which was really nice of him. So they were actually the last two words we exchanged, and even though it was by email. So I wrote this piece, and I contacted Sunday Miscellany that Friday, and I had to record it that morning, hoarse and all as I was, because Sarah Binchy wanted it on that Sunday. So I felt so honoured that I had that piece on that weekend that he died. So I'll share it with you. 2 words from Hong Kong. Cuan Cuan. The last 2 words you would write to me. Unaware as I was that you were so ill, I reached out to forage your store of phrases, garner from your knowledge of the right word. Dip into the well of your deep-rooted Tishkent. Though you told me you weren't capable to advise all who beseech you for words, you dug deep and followed up with just 2. Cuan Cuan. Cuan Cuan, safe harbour. It never dawned on me that you were running out of strength, that you might have had to reel through a fog of pain to fish for the words that today I return to you in a bannocht ag brep buíochas, for your magnificent, curious mind, your generous spirit, your sensitive, ancient soul. To the very arán agus im of your open heart, your unique mancomas, may you journey now to your own Cuan Ciúin. And following that, there's another soul that I remember with great fondness. He's dead quite a while, and I know Manchon had a lot of regard for him and his philosophies. And I spent some time last October in Connemara at an artist retreat there, and I was with a friend of mine, Bernie, who also is a friend of Mary's, and she was working on some ceramics and I was working on my words. And we had a little kind of project in mind where we were looking at some of the sands on the beaches out there and the formation of them. And we were kind of bringing our chemistry background into it. So while I was there, I was doing a lot of wandering, and I was down around Hinch Castle, and I remembered that John Moriarty, that famous Kerry philosopher, spent a lot of time gardening there, and somehow he was in my head and in my mind, and I kind of could hear his voice because I used to listen and read a lot of his work. And he had this lovely term called a lovely old world. So I've called this next piece A Lovely Old World after John Moriarty. We come together late in our lives, weathered enough to know loveliness, to see ourselves in oceans of each other, to greet otherness in the bonds of chemistry and hold dear the nature the world has moulded in each of us. Your hands fire new shapes, emboldened by minuscule shells and forms sea-washed to shore, unicellular specks in the Earth's carbon cycle, both aware of time, of changes in our seas, on our faces, while my hands word a white page, lining in between spaces. We take time in this lovely old world, knowing how blessed we are to come together. And while I was out there, I did a lot of walking and thinking, and I spent a lot of time at Dogs Bay near Clifton. Some of you may be familiar with that area. And the spectacular beaches that are there, but there is a lot of history around it. And I'm very interested in the famine story and all of that, so I thought that I'd just touch on that with you. And as it happens, I haven't realised you had the National Famine Commemoration here 2 years ago, and we're having it on Sunday in Portuguese, and we've had a lot of community events around that. So the next few poems are kind of famine based, and I know Mariah did a lot to help the poor as well, so it kind of fits in as well. This one is called Dead Man's Grave, and it's the name of a spot on the map, on the Ordnance Survey map, and the great Tim Robinson's writing was a great education, and I gained so much from this. So I borrow a line from St. Columba to introduce it, that I may hear the murmur of the long waves against the rocks, that I may hear the sound of the sea like mourning beside a grave. Setting foot homewards through bracken, the wind skinning his shins, so thin now his shadow but a spindle, but enough of him there to be spotted by the hare hiding in the whins and bog myrtle, ever aware. When the old man went astray and took shelter under his rock, his back to the roaring sea, offering prayers across the Atlantic to his own kind, shipped from his land's sorrowful hunger, the hare kept watch. The last sighting is the man's feet, bone bare and bog brown, curling themselves into this first bit of shelter since heading for streams and dunes away from Clifton's workhouse. Standing guard, the hare knows he's not to be missed. Who was left of his kin sailed already from Arvala on famine ships, the rest long dead from the fever. Mihal, the last O'Donnell to cave in. No grave mark for him here, but a corner of peat, carved out in stories passed down from the neighbour led by the hare to where his remains are still remarked upon, still known as Dead Man's Grave. The story goes that a carved headstone arrived into the harbour shipped by his relatives in America, a stone too heavy, too big to bear up to this forsaken mossy spot. It's said the monument is there, laid out in the bed of Ramstone Bay, fanned by seals, sawed out with silvery mackerel, likened with kelp and bladderwrack. The next poem is really a response to the workhouse in Portuguese, a very intact H-block building, and is open as a museum. And we recently had a series of writing workshops which I facilitated, and the members of the group responded to artefacts or exhibitions or exhibits that are there in the workhouse, and it was a really interesting process. But this piece I wrote probably one of the first times I arrived into the workhouse and got that eerie cold feeling, and I called it Silence of Stone. My history's here in the silence of stone, life story echoed in whispers of wood. Hear my voice ring from the ivy and weeds and the rustle of hawthorn, oak and beech. My life story echoes in whispers of wood, where ghost children play, go cold and forlorn. Here in the rustle of hawthorn and beech, I gave shelter and food under my roof. Where my ghost children play, golden forlorn, trace out the boards where they curled on the straw. Here they found shelter under my roof, wove cobwebs on beams that still hold their dreams. Trace out the boards where they curled on the straw and open my doors, leave all stigma behind. Clear the beams' webs that captured their dreams. Pull down my gates, let the outside in. Fling open my doors, leave my stigma behind. Here, my voice sings through the ivy and weeds. Swing back my gates, let the curious in. My history is heard in the silence of stone. And the next one I'd like to read is one that I wrote in response to the recent workshops we had. And I thought it fitting to read here. And somebody mentioned about mirrors there in the photography in relation to Marion Edgeworth. And again, this is looking at the artefacts in the museum. In the last couple of years, near the Matrons Quarter, they found wrapped up the remnants of what were quills and a nib, and they're on display. And of course, the writer in me was drawn to it, so I wrote this piece. And as it happened, when we were doing the workshops, I also visited Birmingham at the time. I was over there for a different reason, and was staying in the Jewellery Quarter and very near the Pen Museum in Birmingham, which is a fascinating place because I didn't know anything about it until then. And the majority of nibs back in the day were made in this factory. There were 80,000 nibs a day produced, and mainly by women. So I kind of married the two stories together and created this, and I called it Mirrored Lives. For the curious writer, a rusted nib and remnants plucked from the left wing of a goose draw me to the pair of quills in the display case. Treasured by matron owns, perhaps, her cursive recorded over and over, the personal details of the poor. Too many names for these discarded quills, their barrels caved in at certain points where she leaned hard on the shaft, scribing letters, listing illnesses, signing requisitions for Virol, Cylon, caustic soda, or written orders for bottles of ochre or oxblood ink. Later, she welcomed the honed pen nibs that travelled all the way from Birmingham, where in a bright lit room, thousands of workers, mainly women, slaved in lines, standing at presses, punching nib shapes from blanks of mirrored steel. The remains of one lies here, damaged by dampness, scratched beyond usefulness. Divided by a wide sea, in that British factory and this Irish workhouse, rules were similar. No water, no food, no talking, just work, work, repetitive work. Most illiterate, half-starved, half-paid. Today's pen hails the women who embossed that city's Frederick Street and the Manaw recorded in our poor law union, all unaware of their mirrored lives. So I'm going to take you a little bit away from the workhouse story, and I love writing about people and characters, or I meet a lot of them in my work and in my daily life, and I love watching people together and people not so much together, so and write about them, maybe fictitiously. A lot of them don't know I've even written about them. So the first one I'm going to read is called A Catch, and it was published in Poetry Ireland, the Love collection they published recently, edited by Theodore, and I was delighted to get this into it. The Catch. She carries the anxiety for them both. Why wouldn't she? He smoked more cigarettes in a day than the number of students in his classes. No wonder his chest is a road map of stitches. On their daily forest walks, they stride out at ease with each other. She on his left always, so the few words exchanged will be picked up by his good ear. In time with her rhythm, his left arm at hand to catch her the odd time her knee gives him. On the days she sometimes stumbles, he wraps her in his arms and she leans in, steadying herself. He inhales that same scent that drew him to the young girl he often glimpses when she smiles. She, her ear bright to his pulse, tuned in, whispers a prayer for the steady lad her father hoped she'd catch. And the next one I'm going to read is a fairly recent one that I wrote, and it's kind of a childhood tale, but I'm sure a lot of you will have gone through something similar or know somebody like this person. It's called Whiskey and Whisperings. By the time he finally drowned himself in whiskey, your teenage ears have learned to amplify the whispers, tune into the innuendo at the mention of his name. In the line of funeral goers, you manage to translate the labels pinned by the sincerity of sympathisers, words that swirl through the queue: heartscald, waster, drunkard, philanderer. In their handshakes for his long-suffering wife, you understand how others view him through the lens of his whiskey bottle. But you are cast back to your 10-year-old self, racing down the bog road, distraught in a frantic search for your mother you believe to be lost. Your duffel coat batting behind you like wings and skull sandals clipping the road. Your hysteria quelled by this man's halting car, saving you from yourself, giving you the heed he knew you needed. With care and reassurance, he eased you into his car and safely home. where your mother saw beyond his glazed eyes a kind of understanding in this crater of a neighbour whose tortured liver survived another decade until the whisperings finally drowned him. The next one I'd like to read is one of my earlier poems, and it's a memory again from when I was about 10, and the local shop, which we don't have in many of the towns anymore. Just the long counter, all the groceries, all the chat, all the neighbours, a gathering of people, not just for food, but for the companionship of it. And our local shop was owned by Frank and Maggie. Well, Frank didn't really work in it. He just sat by the fire in the kitchen, and Maggie did all the running around him. But she got sick one time, and I was sent to help. So I became a little bit of a helper, and maybe that's what got me behind the counter of a pharmacy as well in time. But it was a learning experience, and this describes it. Sunday ritual. From the door of their small shop that opened into the back room, I watched the soaping of his shiny apple head, uncapped only on Sunday mornings, herself leaning over the kitchen sink in her ritual as personal as a whispered prayer. My wonder at the sight of a wife washing a man's face, her hands circled in bubbles, cupping the water to rinse the week away, then shave his stubble in sandy strokes, the kettle boiling on the Rayburn, 2 eggs poaching, his gleaming face renewed. Only the wheeze from their red shop door lured me away to serve at the counter, witness to an intimacy I couldn't fathom at 11. Their comfort with my presence steadily drew me to share their table, taste my first salted island of yellow yolk, set in a shining sea of white. My first glimpse of the comfort of a poached egg, of a woman so loving, of a man so naked, so loved. I'm just going to give you 2 more, if that's okay with you. And the first one is a poem that I wrote about my going away from home, and I'm sure most of you here have been away from home or had to leave home at some stage. You may be back again, but that this was my experience of heading to the big smoke from Strokestown at the tender age of 17, thinking I knew it all and knew nothing. Sorry. And I dedicated this to a friend of mine called Mary Barry, who likewise started off her city career at the same time. Brown coats. I am one of 2 brown coats, stepping off the number 11 bus, about to get familiar with each other. I check out the style of the other, more wasted, a lighter shade of chestnut, just as sensible as me, however, chosen maternally by 2 practical mothers sending their 17-year-olds to the big city, cloaked in cloth guaranteed to protect from the rain, the cold. We are drawn together. From the bus stop heading to front gate, earthed by the familiar waft from Peterson's tobacco shop, my pocket promises to carry a quarter back home to Pat, the neighbour in my left behind town. Bald head, fingers tanned with years of rolling condor plug. Side by side, us coats hang out together, over chairs, inside lockers, on carriers of bikes. 2 sets of saucer eyes discover the new geographies of Front Square, the Pav, the Cumberland, St. Mark's, trying to make a whole of elsewhere, its strange bustle and stream of bus routes. Comforted by our uniformity, the tone of the bog the same shade as the coat. The return weekend train to the city flits by familiar fields. Station names like nursery rhymes, Boyle, Ballymote, Mullingar, Maynooth, as loneliness like an autumn scarf weaves into a pair of coats. Drawing us closer, we unbutton the differences in each other, delve into the lining of our lives. We flaunt in the safety of two, like Edna O'Brien's country girls, sleeve in sleeve, seldom seen apart, shoulder pads well tested, as an only child in Gabardine is glad to have the lapel of another. So many chats are sewn into our scenes, so many secrets are under the collar, and a world walked in matching good shoes. In time we wear ourselves out, move from bicycle to car, flat to house and apart, outgrowing the worn weave of 2 brown coats left behind. And the last poem I'm going to read is the last poem in my book here, and it's for any of you who have driven children to music class or something similar. I think you'll understand this. And I love my 3 daughters dearly, but 17 years on the same road on every Thursday, it got tricky. This is called The Road to New Inn. On Thursdays, the day for New Inn, with imperfect perfection, my trio pours into the car. Violin, viola and cello, in a weekly divining at the musical well. Our overture plays out on the road, punctuated with white lines through villages that hold dynamics of their own. Legato on the first stretch. A minor chord hits in climber, tractors always slowing the pace. As we pass harmonic Haresbrook, a crescendo builds approaching the graceful waltz that is Gertie Madden. Here a change of key to the metronome of my indicator. We turn right and hit a major 7th at Mulla, a page turn at the crossroad. Staccato, yield, then straight ahead. The back seat is full of shrills and high-pitched cymbals, watching for the dog who's always chasing his tail outside that shop, the Grace Note and Treat Stop at Capitagal Cross. And if, carried away by the arpeggios of Martin O'Connor's Road West, my fingers dancing on the steering wheel, my pace quickening with the maestro's fingerwork, volume up to drown the groans of reluctance from the daughters, my car might end up in the dead march of Kilconnell, where a scherzo was needed to make it on time. Pedal and foot sharpened to the pizzicato of the engine, the windscreen wasn't by the wipers, we arrive with the rain of New Inn, the end of the line. Moods, music and hormones, in a glissando of girls glide from my car, sometimes practiced, rarely polished in their mad dash to the shore of Kyoto. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to ask me, I'm happy to respond. You've been very attentive. It can be hard in a small number of people, but it's very cosy, so thank you.
Where are we going? Well, you're on the number 11.
Where was I going?
Yeah.
I was on the number 11 bus, I was on the number 11 bus from Clonskee into Trinity College.
Right.
And the reason I was in Clonskee was when I applied for pharmacy on the CAO, it was still listed for University College Dublin, UCD. And the year I started, it changed to Trinity, and I was absolutely astounded that I was going to a different college, all my friends. And I hadn't a clue how to get from A to B. So I was pretty lost. Yeah, so that's what I was. So I got to know the 11 bus, and there was a fabulous bus driver and conductor that kind of looked after us. Just so many familiar with 11.
Goat stands, so sometimes that way I was interesting plants.
Yes.
And sometimes
62 let me down last was a catch and hop on the edge and
That's
walk
good.
my son Kelsey and
Wow.
personally instead of walking through their hair that was
Here's Goldstone's just up the road. I stayed in the university residence with the lovely Opus Dei people, which I haven't written a poem about that yet. Yeah. So that was the number 11.
Oh,
You just mentioned a few things there. Michael Longley actually was a participant here in the poetry in the past. And the other one was mentioned Moncon. Moncon's sister Kerry McCall McCann, was here this morning.
Oh, Mom!
Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing.
She's of the British Council.
Okay.
So she was with the British ambassador today, so that's another coincidence.
I wonder would she be in Portuguese?
I'm not sure now.
Yeah.
And then the third thing was the Ballynahinch Castle in 1830, around 1830. Some friends of Mariah Edgeworth came to Edgeworthstown and said they'd love to go to Connemara, and she had no real interest in going. But they put all the carriages together and all the housekeepers were all brought. And they went on a trip from Edgeworthstown and their travelling partner got sick in Ballynahinch. And they had to stay in Ballynahinch Castle for 3 months with the Martins.
Wow.
Yeah, and so there's lovely letters between the daughter of the Martins and Mariah Edgeworth. It continued from Ballynahinch then. And you can imagine, isn't it?
Wow. Wow.
It continued from Ballynahinch then up to Lord Sligo in Westford House, and then back to Castlebar. I forget the house that stayed in Castlebar.
Bravefield.
No, they're a big family.
Another estate.
Yeah, another the Moors. Moor
Yeah.
Hall. Sorry.
Okay.
The Moors of Moor Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she wrote. We have it actually in the library. She wrote a book about her travels. I think it took about 4 or 5 months altogether.
Wow.
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
But she wrote to her brother Michael Packingham in India.
Yeah.
And she kept a diary of every day, every single day.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, and there was one very interesting thing. She had this first place she stopped was in Athlone. And she stayed overnight in Athlone. And I'm not sure if it's the pub, the oldest pub in Ireland that's in Athlone. But she stayed in an inn in Athlone, and she admired a painting that was over the fireplace. And she asked the innkeeper if she could buy the painting. And he said, you can buy the painting, but you can't buy the frame. So he took the painting out of the frame, she brought it, took it home with her. And it ended up that it was a Van Dyke painting that she had got.
Wow.
I don't know if she ever went back and admitted it.
Right.
Yes, they're just cute stories.
Yeah. I love the way things link.
Yeah,
You just never know when you're reading something how it can connect. So, anybody else?
I think you called the book Featherweight.
I called, yes, that was.
That was the mention something about feathers.
Yeah, yeah, the significance of it. I went back to college during COVID, and I did my master's in creative writing in UL part-time for 2 years. And while I was there, I kind of concentrated on trying to get the collection together, because I've been writing for years and years, and really I had to kick myself and say, come on, get your book together and get a publisher. So Ireland House took it on. So then I was putting a collection together for the pieces I was doing as well, and that was kind of a prelude to this. And I know I was in the video that you saw, and I was talking about the kind of, I was thinking of the difference between prose and poetry as well, and I kind of think that there's the words are weighted, but they're also really light, and I liked that juxtaposition of feather and weight, but also feathers do matter to me. And my mother died almost 14 years ago, and I wouldn't have had the faith that she had, and she had such a devotion to the Lord and all of that that generation really had strongly. And I often debated with her and talked to her and kind of used to say, well, you let me know, if there is something when you're gone and all of this. But literally within 2 or 3 months of her, and it's like I couldn't remember her voice. I didn't dream of her. I couldn't even see her in after she died. And then a few months later, I had a dream about her. And the next morning, I have quite a big lawn outside my house. White feathers, and I see them so frequently. Like it's quite uncanny, and I do think I see them as, lots of people see them as a sign, but certainly it was a coincidence because when I've lived five decades without the white feathers and suddenly they start to appear.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm really bothered about something, when I go for a walk and literally one white feathers will be there she's like a little angel there, and I go, yeah, that's you're there. And I'm going to feel she's to say it's okay. So whatever it helps. So that's my feather story and the feather weight, and I just kind of feel you have the light, and that. Yeah. So that's the reason for that.
Maybe just on the same theme, I'm fascinated that so many contemporary poets write about their childhood. I know the American Portuguese said we lived our lives once in childhood, the rest is just memory. Just wonder what your take on that is.
And I kind of feel as I've been writing for a long time, and a lot of the poems that I published in this were poems that maybe were written 20 years ago, but edited until they can't be edited anymore. But I find, yes, that I suppose the real truths are from back then, or the real you. And I think as we get older, that real you kind of is allowed out more. And a lot of poets would say that. At the same time, there are contemporary issues, and sometimes I wish I could be delving more into them. I've written a couple of poems, more recent, not even political, but just responses to things. But that's not really my true voice, I think. At the same time, I don't want to have a maudlin sentimentality about the childhood times or the youth times. I try and separate, try and keep the emotion tempered a bit, because my first response to anything is emotional, usually comes from the heart, and then the head takes over. But I try and let the head and hand guide the heart when writing.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay.
You mentioned your pharmacist or where, or is that right?
Pardon?
You were a pharmacist.
I still am.
You said that.
I still am, yes.
It doesn't, that career doesn't talk about in your work. I'm just wondering, is that just to pay the rent, the pharmacy job, or do you get great inspiration from it in any way?
I certainly do, from the people I meet, and like I live in a small town like this, so you get to know all the people, and unfortunately you sometimes hear of an illness before families even know, or whatever, and so it would influence my writing, but I try not to make it too obvious. I've written a couple of poems during COVID. I because we were so stressed and busy and madly at work, there were a couple of writing pieces that came out of that. So it does influence, and I suppose it's a very exacting job, the precision of everything being right and proper, and to me it's a little bit like writing. And again, there's no space for error in medication, and I feel I try the same with my writing. But yes, it is certainly influenced by the people I would know and see and meet, and I would observe a lot while working. But and I've loved the job because I love meeting people and doing it. what it is, you know. So. Yes.
Would you take a small anecdote about my mother who was a chemist?
Sorry.
Would you take a small
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to.
my mother was a chemist, and one day this shady-looking character came into the shop asking for arsenic. And my mother was very frightened, and she gave him a harmless compound.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
There used to be on a prescription pad, and it was before my time. Mary, you might remember it, where a doctor would write ADT, prescribe ADT, which meant any damn thing. Which is your placebo of nowadays. But nowadays, there's nothing like that being written. Yeah, something. Yeah. And where was she a pharmacist?
Then Borough Street in Dublin.
In Dublin, wow. Yeah. She took a lot of stories from there.
Inner city.
Inner city. Did you see the census program on television last weekend? Joseph O'Connor visited is it Mushat's, that's one of the oldest pharmacies in the Liberties. Of course, it was an apothecary or chemist back then. And he had books from the early 1900s. I have from our pharmacy as well. Yeah. And it's so interesting. And actually, in the poem I wrote about the nibs and what the matron might have been ordering, there were three things that were sold to the workers in Portuguese in 1919. Because I did a history project last year on the Spanish flu through the prescription books. And it was so interesting, so interesting. So those, and any of you that use euthynyl toothpaste to wash your teeth, you could get it back then in 1915, which is amazing. Yeah, so there's another little bit of nonsense for you. Anyway, I better let somebody else on.
Stage in a few minutes. But if anybody needs a little break, just feel free to have a little break. That's okay. So Vítor he was telling me that he lives in Bray. And it's Dublin Bray?
Yeah.
Vítor, is that right? Or Richard, he's not sure. Yeah, well, it depends who asks. Anyway, so Vítor is Portuguese. Is that right?
Correct.
Good. And the other important point about Vítor is that he has a cat.
Most important thing.
That's the very important one, yeah. So we were chatting about Vítor and his cat, because I had a look online, and he does a podcast called Witty Vítor, which he's still doing. And the picture shows Vítor going like this, and the cat is kind of, saying hi to him with his paw. And his name is Hanu Cat, which is interesting. It's a lovely name for a cat. And Vítor assures me that the cat is really good-natured and he loves the cat. And he'll tell you more about the cat when he's up on the stage. So it affects him deeply. Having the cat as a pet. Okay, so Vítor is going to talk to us about experiences on his own travels, such as memories. And I think it places a lot of importance on this sense of visiting places that shape us. I feel that that's coming out strong from his sort of read about descriptions of what he does and what he writes. So he has reflections and readings for us from his own writing coming up. And as like Noelle, there'll be interactive audience participation with memories and thoughts or experiences of your own that you might like to share with Vítor. And because he's saying to me through my emails that we sort of went back and forth, he was drawing on his own travels, and that he must have travelled a lot, and he has. He said to me he's been to Poland. He went to Poland on his own, and he didn't know the language. He didn't know anybody in the country, and I thought that was very brave. He said it was very, you were young and daft or something. Anyway, but obviously travelling is something that he likes to find thought and memory and kind of a response to. So it reminded me of other books that have been written about people travelling, and one of them that jumped out at me was Around Ireland with a Fridge. I nearly said Around Ireland in a Fridge, but that wouldn't work. But it was by Tony Hawks. That's a light, interesting read, and it's based in Ireland, and it's kind of funny. And then there's the other one, which is Dubliners. I was thinking of that one with James Joyce. That was about middle-class Dublin people living in the early 20th century. But it gave you also a sense of place and a sense of the type of people who were living in Dublin at the time. So you get a kind of sense of people from places. And there was anything by Niall Williams, which I was interested in, because I said to myself, Niall Williams, he didn't write anything called anything. He's written, 4 Letters of Love. Do you remember that one? Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, it was very nice. And then there's another one, Only Say the Word, and This Is Happiness. I'm thinking there's nothing listed here on anything. I thought it means anything by Niall Williams, anything he's written. And so I thought, oh my God, then he would drop from stage. Anyway, but then I came across the fact that he was married to his wife, Christine Britton, in New York, and they were both writers. And she had come, her forebears had come in 1910, her grandfather or her father had come from Ireland, Kiltumper it's called, the little town in County Clare, to live in New York. And I think they both thought, let's go back to Ireland. So they went back, and the little place was a wreck. You could see the sky through ceilings and everything like that. And 36 years they spent building it up and adding on extensions here, there and everywhere. And every time they got paid for something, they wrote it would be that extension. And then something else would be called the other extension because they got paid. But they built up a beautiful garden that is like a mecca for certain people. And a mecca for them, definitely, in terms of inspiration. So it's a sense of space and of place that I'm thinking about here. It's called A Year in an Irish Garden, and I thought it was lovely that they emphasised all through their life together is the sense of place that they're in, and of course they made this place utterly and completely part of them, and everything they do is based on this one place, and everything comes from this one place that they put their hearts into. So, we're going to hear Vítor now. Are you coming up, Vítor? And we'll give you a clap, and thank you for coming to see me.
Good evening, dear Longford friends. It is with immense pleasure that I return to the Maria Edgeworth Festival, this time for a talk on travel writing. I want to extend my gratitude to John, who I met last year, and Elizabeth, that I just met, so thank you very much for the opportunity. As a matter of introduction, I think the highlight that already been said, I have a cat. That's the most important fact about my life. If I knew that would be that relevant, I would have brought the cat, so perhaps that's something to think of if there is a third visit. So I'm originally Portuguese, and I've spent the last 20 years living abroad. See, it's crazy when I think about it. I remember when I moved to Barcelona, which was the first place where I lived overseas, and I met a few Portuguese individuals. And they were living overseas for 15, 20 years, and I thought they were lying, but now I'm one of them. So, yeah, a lot of surprises come your way when you don't expect it. So 20 years living abroad, and half of them are in this country, in Ireland. So you may ask me, do I like this country? I think I like this country a lot. And a lot is I think it's not even the right word. It's so much love I have for this country. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lived here for 10 years. I typically say that I love Ireland more than Irish people love their own country. And I think there's a reason for that. Is all of us, we tend to be more critical of our own people and to some extent to our good selves. It's just normal. Everyone acts like that. The other thing is that we are not happy when others call out our flaws and faults. Is that the case in Ireland? Let's say if you hear someone from other country saying unpleasant things about Ireland. Things you recognize that are true. Do you feel a bit uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah? Come on. Yeah, I think that's across the board. That's across the board. That happens in Italy, that happens in Ireland, that happens in Japan, in Peru, in Australia. Everyone acts like that. It's very ironic. Why? I think it's because we tend to raise the bar to an unattainable standard when it comes to ourselves and our own people. We just don't like to see our nation underperforming in the same way we dislike when it happens to our friends. We all want our friends to do well. We all want to be proud of what our friends are doing. If they are not doing great, it's just painful because there's a lot of love involved. Right, talking about travels. I was just in Portugal last week. Actually, I've been on the road for a good few weeks. But last week I was in Portugal, and despite living abroad for a couple of decades, despite these 20 years, I'm still demanding that my compatriots modernize their habits. Or sometimes not. I mean, modernity is not doing them any favors. Why? Because we cannot be neutral. We cannot be neutral when love and happiness are involved. Those two sentiments, they are strong. They are huge. Sometimes they are overwhelming, and there's not much we can do about it. We just need to accept and keep going. But to the point of this talk, which is revisiting happy places, let's first ask ourselves the big question. And the big question is it possible, or how possible it is to go back? Think about it in two ways. One, philosophically, and second, logistically. Because for the return to take place, we need to be the same person. And the place needs to remain unchanged since our last visit. So likely that's not the case. Things are changing all the time, and same happened with ourselves. There's no tragedy on it. This is just a mutable nature of things and beings. So, in my understanding, going back, it's not a real return. It's an experience, but it's not a real return. You cannot go back. It's rather the encounter of two rebranded entities, which may still like each other, but perhaps they like each other even more because distance tends to help love stories. So I would like to ask you, I want to ask a question to you guys. Number one, are there any writers in the room other than me?
Any?
Writers? Writers? Yeah, there's one there. I know there's one there. There's a poet who was just here, so yeah, two. Yeah? One more here? 3? 4? 5? It's growing, you know? I like it. Yeah? Okay, so we have 5 writers in the room. Right, maybe we have more. We'll discover as we speak. I'd like to ask if we have people from Longford here who have been living outside of the county and you now returned. Anyone in that situation? 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Why is always 5? I have a problem with it. 5 is just a big coincidence. Okay, next question. Perhaps there'll be 5 people. Let's see. Folks who are based here in the heart of Ireland, but are originally from other counties or counties. 1, 2, there must be 3 more. 3, 4? 3, 4, where's the 5th?
Just visiting for the weekend.
4. Okay. Right. So, you made a way to this experience. So when you revisit your roots, it's not exactly a holiday. It's often an exhausting experience. Why? Because everyone wants to see you. And everyone thinks that your day has more than 24 hours. They don't know how, but they believe so. And they forget that you need to squeeze time for sleeping, showering, and other ordinary life customs and obligations. Why you might feel celebrity? I tell you, it can be draining. I had a Portuguese girlfriend here in Ireland who said that after visiting Portugal, she always felt she needed a second holiday. Now, her words resonate with me big time. But I also reckon that she hated her job. And she was looking for an excuse for a second holiday. I don't blame her. Who isn't? Say you are a writer and you have a daytime job, like Noelle just mentioned. Having time off is crucial for your writing, let alone your well-being. But you need to remind yourself, whether it's using your mobile phone or the fridge, you need to remind yourself that what happens outside your routine, it's not always real. Why? Because your mood, when you are away, twists the reality in two different methods. It's pinkish on arrival, and it tends to be shady during the last couple of days. Now, one can say that is part of the deal, it's just the way it is. Because your sentiments will determine your understanding of things and impact your interactions. That's fine. Just be aware of your biases. And remember that folks in the place where you are for a few days, those folks are just living their mundane lives. So ask people, how is life? How is work? How is the weekend? And if you are in Ireland, people just say it's grand. And we know grand can mean loads of things, from absolutely awesome to nearly awful. Happiness is not necessarily in the words, but between the lines. Happiness lives in the tone. Happiness lives in the heavy silences. By the way, I have another question for you. I believe that there are many traits that we, the Portuguese and the Irish, share. Would you like to guess what are those traits that we Portuguese and Irish share? Who wants to guess?
Having parties or celebrations.
Celebrations, yeah. I think that's one, yeah.
In my experience is that the Portuguese, even though they're quite laid back.
No, quite laid back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, yeah.
The weather.
The weather. Yeah, I agree with that. I think Portuguese, November is very similar to Irish July. So that's correct. If there is a heat wave fever, of course. Any other?
What's your voting system like?
Voting system?
Proportional representation?
It's terrible because, but there's nothing you can do about because all the politicians are crap in Portugal. And not just in Portugal. It's across the board. Actually, my father's a politician, so I can speak very well when it comes to the behind the scenes. Yeah. Okay. Politicians and stuff. Okay.
Having a powerful neighbour, we have England, you have Spain.
That's right. And we are like the small brother, you know, small, smarter, and handsome. The Portuguese and the Irish.
Yes, we find Portuguese all over the place, like we find Irish.
Yeah, everywhere. It's even annoying. Yeah. Yeah, so Sometimes when I'm not in the mood, I say I'm from Cyprus. Because if I say I'm Spanish, they all speak Spanish. If I say Italian, they might try. Greek, you never know. But Cyprus, I'm from Cyprus. Last year, I'm from the Turkish part of Cyprus, and I can be on my own. But there's one more. I think you didn't guess, but that's fine.
Language.
Which one?
Language.
Language?
Yeah, the Portuguese language as opposed to, that you have yourselves. And we
Yeah.
have Gaelic.
Ah, right. Yeah, we have a language. Yeah. That's okay. That's one.
Passion.
Passion.
Passion was very
Passion.
strongly.
Yes. Yeah. That's another one. There's one that is related to what you just said, the passion and the language, which is we are both the talkative type, Irish and Portuguese. We just like to talk.
It's the national voice in this country. Talk, and more talk.
Yeah, I'm going to be more positive. I'll put the national sports, but it can turn into a national vice. I agree. And it's even awkward if someone is not up for a chat. Like, what's wrong with him? Why are you shy? What happened? Why are you reserved? No? We want to know. There's something wrong there. Now, Portuguese people talk about everything, more than we should. But there's one topic that we don't discuss nearly as much as the Irish do. And I'm sure you know what's the topic. Of course you know. The weather. The weather. I could do a whole talk on the weather. But everyone is talking about it, so why would I come from Bridge to talk about the weather? No? There's nothing more entertaining in the whole universe than Irish weather. It simply cannot be boring. I often say that if I were to leave this country, I don't want to. One of the things I would miss most is the sky. Yeah, the Irish sky is a complete show, especially in spring. I love it. I truly love those late evenings between May and July. And I think they are connected to the fact that my first ever visit to Ireland was in late April, early May, in 2007, if I'm not wrong. I usually say that I fell in love at first sight with the Irish sky. The first time I look up, I fell in love. True story. The same I can swear, there's no Bible, but there's a Bible here. The same I can say about Guinness. That was love at first sip. I probably wouldn't have clicked with Ireland quite as much if my debut visit had taken place during the dark months of November or January. Or perhaps I would have still have connected with the country, the Irish pub. Have you noticed the taps at the bar when you are overseas? Have you noticed how different they are? Fewer, yeah. It's sad, no? It's sad. In Portugal, we probably have 3. 2 lagers and a stout. And that's already a stretch. That's probably an Irish pub in Portugal. And people, if they want to have a beer, they just say, "Can I have a beer?" This boy, "Can I have a beer?" It feels odd to specify the beer by name. Say, "Can I have a Super Bowl?" which is one of the Portuguese beers. Trust me, I do that all the time. I ask beers by name, and people look at me as I'm saying something inconvenient. In Ireland, you guys not only order a specific beer, but you also get it in the related branded glass. You are so picky. I love it. I think I assimilated a lot of Irishness. If for strange reason I'm given a pint of Guinness in the Beamish glass, I need to step outside from time to time, just to remind myself that I'm not in Cork. Believe me, it's this much of a synesthesia. But going back to a happy place, It's about feeling that your whole life makes sense just because of what you are feeling right here, right now. Like all the issues, obstacles, challenges, all the shadows, sorry for my friend, are justified by how life feels in the present moment. So if you are a writer, and there were 5 in the room, you want to document it. How can you let go of a situation when the universe feels this harmonious? But you also want to be gentle with your movements. One single wrong gesture, one unnecessary sound, and the whole experience can be ruined. On the other hand, you also want to live fully as well, to the very extent of what's happening to you. In other words, this is the travel writer's dilemma. As the author of 15 travel books and someone who has the blessing of visiting over 70 countries, I'm frequently faced with this question. Should I write on the spot and risk missing the moment, or just take it all in and wait until I'm back home to translate into words? I reckon that both methodologies have their downsides. One needs to choose what suits the context best. So for instance, back in 2010, I wrote directly on the Trans-Siberian while crossing Russia from one side to the other. But I held back my pen until I was back in Ireland to write about my evacuation from the Holy Land during the 12-day war with Iran. Because like with most things in life, there is a middle ground. Writers can take notes while traveling, when they are back at their Airbnbs or while sitting at a cafe. But let's go back to the topic of the night, returning to happy places. Happy places and the return, it's also going back to that bar where we had those 2 stouts or the tasty pastry while just watching the city passing by. As a matter of fact, I'm less and less a fan of sightseeing, and I have an increased interest in just sitting quietly and observing mundane life moving around me. One might say it's passive, but I reckon this is my method of perceiving life at the pace of the flaneur, that old-fashioned figure who wandered around with no other intention than gathering fragments of the human heart. My dear Longford friends, last time I was here in 2025, it was my first ever visit to the country. I experienced tranquility and hospitality, and I've been longing to return ever since. Ireland is more than one of my happy places. I call Ireland home with my letters. And home, in my own definition, home is a shelter for the soul. I pray for that shelter to remain intact, because there is something quite unique about the Irish and the Ireland where we live. You cannot compare the crack to any other way of having fun. You cannot even properly translate into other language, and I'm a translator myself, and I always struggle to find an equivalent in Portuguese, Spanish. It's just impossible. Even with AI, there's no way. It's that spontaneous instinct to make life lighter when the burden of the human condition is ready to smash us and tear us into pieces. It's something that has saved all of us, whether we realize it or not. Because each and every single of us, we all need a happy place to go back to. We do not necessarily need to live there all the time, but we must have felt it once and know that we can experience it again in the future. Because each and every single of us, we all need something to look forward to, even if it means going backwards. This is often an inward call, a call towards the abysses of ourselves, the hills we hiked that somehow healed us. This is where happiness is. A place that is not really a place made of people, a path. A place where we walked, hiked, and healed. Thank you for the opportunity, Midland friends. Thank you very much. Thank you. I guess the floor is open for questions, comments. Please.
Do you ever try and do the impossible? I mean, try and read James Joyce's Ulysses.
Yeah, I've tried many challenging things in my life. Some I succeed, some I failed. Probably I failed with the majority. And I remember the first time I read James Joyce, I was still living in Portugal. I left when I was 23, meaning 20 years ago. I just revealed my age.
To read in translation, Portuguese.
Yes, first in translation. It was a translation to Portuguese from Brazil, which is, let's say, to you would be like reading a translation from someone from America. So it's the same language, but there are differences there. No, there are slangs and things like that. So it wasn't easy. I'm not blaming the translator. It's very, 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 very complicated. And I read a lot of James Joyce when I lived in Portugal. I read the Dubliners. I read not the portrait. That's
Portugal.
Yes, that one. Yes, I read that one, and a few fragments here and there. And when I was already fully confident with my English, I tried to read it in English, but I think I'm still very much behind to understand James Joyce.
The one sentence commentary, somebody recently said that it needs to be translated into English.
Any volunteers? Translate James Joyce into English? I think James Joyce, it's my issue with James Joyce that I like fast novels, and this pace is very slow. That's an option. I'm not blaming him, but I like fast stuff. So it's everything is happening at a pace that is, to me, it's difficult to digest. But I mean, he's brilliant. It's just it's too slow for my adrenaline levels. Yeah. But I'm a big fan of Irish writers. I mean, every time I read Oscar Wilde, I feel pleased with life. I think the man was an absolute genius. Fantastic sense of humor, spot on in his observations, and immensely talented. So, yeah, and the list is very long, but Oscar Wilde probably my favorite among the Irish.
Is there a book or a writer that's inspired you to travel to a certain place?
Oh yeah, there are a few. One is Bruce Chaplin. So I made my way to Patagonia in 2010, I think. Yeah, around 2010. Just because I read the book that I'm going to Patagonia, and I said I'm going to do the same. I didn't write about it. I just saw part of Patagonia. I didn't have the luxury to visit the whole film. It's an amazing part of the world. I truly recommend. The nature is fantastic. The wine is beautiful. The weather is pleasant for people like us who live in Ireland because it's not too warm. And yeah, so that was for sure.
Please. Could you repeat?
Bruce Chaplin.
Bruce.
Chaplin. The other one is Franz Kafka. Sorry, Bruce Chaplin, British. Another one is Franz Kafka. I'm a big Franz Kafka guy, and I visited the quarters where he lived in Prague. Just try to breathe the same air. Yeah.
Did you say?
Prague.
Prague, yeah. Yeah.
Did you like that?
I fell in love from the very first second with Prague. The architecture is just stunning.
Oh,
The atmosphere is something that you cannot be indifferent to, and there's so much history.
well, what do you think of the people there?
The people are very quiet. No, they are not like us. Are very quiet. Yeah, very quiet, and it's.
I get what you're saying about Prague, but I couldn't wait to get on the train and get out of there.
Because of the people. Yeah, I understand. Look, I spent 5 years living in Central Eastern Europe, okay?
Yeah.
So I didn't live in Czech, but I lived in Poland and in Hungary. So, and my girlfriend is, you would call it Hungarian from Transcarpathia, meaning she was born in Ukraine, but she's coming from a Hungarian family, okay? So I'm quite familiar with the culture, with the mentality. And it's not easy, especially for us, because we are very outgoing, and they aren't. But if you manage to spend some time with the Czech or the Hungarian or the Polish, and there is a click, that's a click for life. Okay, so it's just a matter of being patient. But I understand it's not something that you would fall in love with.
Agreed for life. GREED.
Yeah, for life. Yeah.
Thus for life.
Yeah.
What
So-
part of Portugal are you from?
I'm from a town very near Lisbon. I usually say that the equivalent of my town or city is Drogheda in Ireland, because it's like about 40 minutes away. It's a labor town, meaning people live there and work in the capital because it's way cheaper to buy an apartment. Back in the days when people were able to get on the property ladder, not anymore. Those days are over. So that's I grew up in that town, but most of my life, especially from the age of 16, was in Lisbon. Because basically my friends were in Lisbon, I was working and studying and partying and doing strange stuff in Lisbon. So Lisbon it's where most of my memories are.
You ever been on a sense of pleasure? Most recently, I'm retired now and I have free travel. And
You're tired?
I'm retired and I have free
I'm
travel.
jealous.
Yeah, but if I'm under pressure, then I might take the train up to Dublin and I see all these visitors and I say to myself, some of those have paid thousands to come to Ireland just to walk around and look at Trinity College and National Museum, the National Library. And can I just go and follow that journey? I go to Trinity College, I go to the National Library, I go to the Tommy Gardens or something. And I get great pleasure out of the fact that other people have paid thousands of pounds or euros or dollars to come and experience what I can experience for nothing.
Yeah.
That's a very Irish thing as well. I don't know if it's Portuguese, but like a bit of Ireland.
Yeah, I think most of us tend to forget what we have around the corner.
Yeah,
We take it for granted. I think I was speaking to Elizabeth about it.
No, me.
With you, sorry. I spoke to so many people, so with you, yeah. And I lived in Barcelona for 3.5 years. And I don't know if you guys visited Barcelona, but there is a famous site called Sagrada Familia, which is a huge church. And I lived for a couple of months just across the road, and I haven't visited Sagrada Familia, not even once. I said, I go next weekend. I was hungover. And I go the weekend after, and I didn't make it because someone was visiting. But then it was the weather. Then I was not in the mood. And we are all guilty from postponing things because we think that we can make it pretty soon, and that's not the case. So, yeah. John.
One of the questions is about an anecdote from travel. Years ago, I went to Australia, and when I was there, I met a guy from Canada of Indian descent, and we kept in touch, But a couple of years ago, he published a book called his father. His father was an Indian man who emigrated from India to Uganda, and he was a tailor, and he ended up being a tailor to Idi Amin.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, he ended up having his family had to flee the country. He ended up in Canada, and that's just an interesting story.
Yeah.
And you met in Australia.
Huh?
And you met in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Australia and also New Zealand on the same trip because they are very close to each other, just 3 hours away by airplane, which is nothing for them. And the first person I talked to, literally on arrival in New Zealand, guess where the gentleman was from?
Portugal.
No.
Right.
No,
Portugal.
Tipperary.
Tipperary.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. As most people would know, I have a great interest in Mariah Edgeworth and her life and everything else. And my wife has no interest in it whatsoever. She prefer that I didn't mention her name, But she always says, when we're going on holidays, don't bring Mariah on holidays with us. Just give me a break for a couple of weeks. And we were on holidays, and I forget where it was, and I kept anything that reminded me of Mariah Edgeworth, I kept dismissing. Don't mention it. Don't mention the war. So we were in this supermarket in the queue in the supermarket checking out, and we were stuff on the thing, and I was paying for it, and this lady said, "Oh, you're from Ireland?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "I love the Irish accent." And then she said, "What part of Ireland are you from?" And I said, "I'm from a little town called Edgeworth in the Midlands." And she said, "Oh, that's where the famous writer was from." And the conversation started, and I had to say, "Teresa, remember, I did not have a conversation." So I was just kind of laughing.
Yeah. I had a funny one in Romania, in Bucharest, ages ago, maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago, even more. So I traveled by train to different parts of Romania with another friend who was also Portuguese, and we ended up in Bucharest for half a day. We were meant to be there for 24 hours, and actually we took the wrong train. We thought we were going to Bucharest, and we took the train to Budapest. So we had to switch train in the middle of the night, and we only had like 6 hours in Bucharest. So we had to grab some food before going to the airport, no time to see the city. And back in those days, there were no mobile phones. So whatever place we find, it's fine. So we ended up in McDonald's. Why not? So we were looking for the queue to order our food. We were not sure if we're in the right queue or not, because there were 2 queues, one to order and another to pick your food. So we just choose a queue and see what happens. We're saying to each other, we are starving, who is the right queue, because we don't want to wait another hour for this. And after 5 minutes, someone touched our shoulder and said, "You are right, that's the right view," and they were Portuguese. So you wouldn't expect that. Yeah. It's a very beautiful country. If you have the chance to visit Romania, especially Transylvania, if you fancy castles, I know we have loads of castles here, but castles, wine, history, culture. Transylvania was the Paris of Eastern Europe back in the day, so I highly suggest Transylvania. You can fly to Bucharest or you can fly to Budapest, just check out the train.
Just another little travel story. I forget where we were in Spain, and we were walking down the promenade, and we saw a little poster stuck to the lamppost, and it was the ex-drummer from Genesis was playing in a concert in a hotel, and there were 4 of us, and I said, "God, I'd love to go and hear him, you know." No, he wasn't ex-drummer, he was an ex-guitarist with Genesis, and of course I'm anxious to be on time, or have to be in time. I went back when we were back in the apartment, and I said, "Now we better go down early." Just reminds me of this evening. We better go down early to get a seat. So the performance was on at 8 o'clock. We were down there at 7:30. The only ones there, only 4 of us that were there. And so we thought we had the wrong night. And so we went into the hotel and we sat in the performance area, much like this in the hotel. And then an Italian couple came in and sat beside us, and they had very little English. And then the guy came out to perform, and there were only 6 of us at the event. And he started off by breaking the ice and said, "If I had known there was going to be only 6 of you here, I would have invited you to my house." But as he said, the show must go on, and it was brilliant. And it was one of the most fabulous nights, and he entertained 6 of us there as if there were 20,000 people in the audience. So I must say that it's the same tonight. We have a small audience, but I must say it's a brilliant night.
100%, yeah. They also ended up in someone's house when I was in Georgia. Not Georgia in America, but Georgia, the country. It's another beautiful country next to Azerbaijan and Armenia. So I made my way to Georgia when I was living in Poland. I was told by people that the locals are very, very friendly, like in the way that you cannot describe. And if they see that you are there when you're around and they like you, they might invite you over. And that's just normal. So don't be surprised. I was in that restaurant by myself having some dinner and wine, and there was some rock music played on the radio. And I'm a big fan of rock. And as I was drinking wine, I started to sing a bit to myself, but maybe I was too loud. And they recognized that I was a rock fan. And they were also rock fans. And they said, "Oh, if you are a rock fan, you need to join this table here." So I joined the table. I joined their meals, their wines, their vodkas and all that. And I said, "Look, you want to stay with us for the night, we're going to bring you to our rock party." And they put me on a taxi. We arrived in that communist block, was falling apart, but the people were 5 stars. The only condition for me to stay with those guys and enjoy the night was I had to greet the grandmother. So there was some old woman on the corner. I had to shake hands. I shook hands with her, and she was already, I don't know, late 80s or even 90s. I don't know. Anyway, I shook hands with her. Then I went back to the room, and as I entered the room was extremely loud. It was like a gig, let's say, and they were listening heavy metal. So we were listening heavy metal for like 3-4 hours, pretending we were, on the stage, and I was thinking, how can this woman sleep while we're here? She must have some, hearing issue, otherwise she must be really rest. Anyway, I'll stay there for the night, They ordered me a taxi back home, and they were extremely friendly. I'll never forget that. I don't have their contact details. Their Facebook, WhatsApp. Well, it was ages ago, and it was one of the nights that will stay with me forever. So, you know. Thank you very much, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Victor. That was great. And so I think that's the end of a great evening, as you say, Matt. It was really good. Yeah. And yeah, so safe journey home. And sure, we'll see you tomorrow, because there's the second day of the Edgeworth Festival tomorrow. So we'll see you tomorrow. And